What's better in chess, a knight or a bishop? Of course, they're both worth 3 points, but they are not equal pieces. In fact, they are very different in how they move and how they are most effective. So we're going to answer this question of which one is better by doing two things. First, I'm going to tell you a story, and then I'm going to show you an actual game that illustrates some of these things. So first, the story. When I first started playing chess, I was about 10 years old probably. I was at a tournament, and there was a strong player there. He was rated about 2,000, an expert level player, which at the time for me was like, whoa, expert. He was like up here, and I'm down here at like 1,000 just getting started. I didn't really know anything. And he was, I don't know, walking around or something, and I was there, and he asked me a question: what's better, a knight or a bishop? And I, was like, good question, and I think I ended up saying, it depends on the position. And he kind of immediately said, no, you're wrong. The bishop is better. And the example that he gave me was something like this. He said, okay, get the piece to the other side of the board. It takes one move for the bishop. And the knight, 1, 2, 3, 4. That was his example, and that was why he said bishops are just better than knights. Now, he's not wrong, okay? And in this particular example of get the piece to the other side of the board the fastest, yes, of course, the bishop's going to win. Bishop is a long-range piece. It's very good at doing things like that, right? But there are other positions where the knight would outshine the bishop. Like if there's a bunch of pawns and the bishop is just stuck behind all these pawns, like which piece is better now, right? Well, probably the knight. The knight's going to be able to do a whole bunch of things and the bishop can't even move, right? So it does depend, but he was trying to make a point about the bishops. So having said that, I want to show you an actual game that I played recently that I think really illustrates why, in general, bishops are better than knights. Of course, there's always going to be exceptions. Of course, there's certain openings where you give up your bishops, certain positions where you want to trade the knight, give up your bishop for the knight. But in general, bishops are better. So let's take a look at this game. I think this is going to be instructive for you guys. So we had a Caro-Kann. I played knight c3, bishop c4. This is a line that I've been playing for a while now. I have good success with it. It's a lot of fun. And he plays b5, just kind of kicking my bishop around right away. Not a big deal. I just drop it back. We get this trade. Knight to f6. I castled. b4. Again, black's playing very aggressively, chasing my pieces around. I jumped back to e2. The bishop comes out to a6. Now, pay attention to this bishop. We're going to talk about this in just a few moves. Okay, so I played knight e5, trying to be aggressive here. I wanted to open up my rook, put some pressure on f7. Maybe there's some crazy sacrifices at some point once I get ready. Bishop to d6. I played bishop to f4. And my opponent trades a bishop for a knight. Now, in and of itself, this is actually a fine trade. Stockfish actually recommends this as the second option. It likes castling, and then it likes actually giving up. So this is a very powerful knight. One of the things about knights is that if they have outposts where they're supported by pawns and they can't be chased away by your opponent's pawns easily, like in this case, it's not easy for black to play f6, knights are very, very powerful. This bishop's not doing a ton here, and so trading it off actually kind of makes some sense in this particular position, so they traded it off. However, I now have something in chess that's called the bishop pair. When one player has two bishops, the other player either has no bishops or only one bishop, you would say that one person has the bishop pair advantage. So I have the bishop pair advantage in this position. But let's see what happens. So knight to d7, attacks my bishop. I don't want to lose the bishop, so I should probably move it. Now, where do you think I moved it to? Well, if you said bishop to g3, just retreating, there's nothing wrong with this. This is actually a Stockfish recommended move. It's totally fine. But the other move that Stockfish likes and what I played in the game is bishop to d6. This illustrates a very important point about bishops. When they slice across your opponent's king, that is extremely dangerous for your opponent. Why? Because it prevents castling. Remember, you cannot move your king through a check in chess. So castling is an illegal move. You can't do it. It's not going to let me do it because there's a bishop here, right? You have to remember this. If you're not using your bishops like this, you're missing out on opportunities, okay? So even though this looks like maybe a dangerous square to put my bishop on because the queen's right there, it's not defended, aren't I overextending? No, the value of this cannot be understated, okay? So bishop d6, already we're seeing this bishop look pretty powerful. Now my opponent makes a mistake here. They're trying to get rid of the bishop, they just forgot about this pawn. And guess what? I'm able to actually capture the pawn, and I'm still preventing the castling. And we're starting to see the long-range power of the bishop at work here, right? Queen to b6. My opponent's trying to get rid of it. I invite you to pause. What do you think I played here? If you had a chance to look at that, I simply played bishop a3. And this is actually still a great square for my bishop. Why? Because it doesn't matter that it's so far away. It's still accomplishing the same goal of preventing my opponent from castling, right? Of course, they could castle this way, but this area of the board is kind of open, and that has its own risks involved. Now, here my opponent makes, I would say, a questionable decision. And it is a blitz game, so, you know, things happen all the time in blitz games. But they decided to trade here. Now, what do they get from this? Well, they do get the pawn on d4. So if you look carefully, it's defended 2 times. But by trading the bishop for the knight here, they lure my queen away, and now they're able to get the pawn with a check. Okay, so that's something. The problem is they gave up their other bishop. So now we have the bishop pair against 2 knights, and just look at how annoying these bishops are, how dangerous it is for the black king because of these long-range bishops that are just sitting kind of away from all the action and yet still putting the pressure on the king. This is where the bishops will shine in a position like this, where there's no pawns blocking their diagonals. They're just full scope of the board. This is what you want. My opponent's knights, I should point out, are not badly positioned, right? Like this knight is smack dab in the center of the board, which is basically where you want your knight. Later on, after I move my king, the other knight is also in a good position. The knights look good, right? But it just doesn't compare to the bishops, particularly this one on a3, right? This is definitely the hero in this game, stopping the black king from castling, okay? So, and by the way, I should also point out, sometimes with the queen and the knight, you have to be extremely careful for smothered checkmate. So as an example, if I were to make a really bad move here, and let's just say move my queen, I don't know, like to, well, I'm trying to find a square. Let's say I go to c4. I have to be really careful because of smothered checkmate idea. So for example, check. If I go here, double check, and then the queen can come down. This is a typical pattern. You want to pay attention. Okay, so maybe my opponent was thinking like, okay, let me try to set something like this up. But luckily for me, in this position here, it's just covered. Right, you can't go there. So I'm totally fine. Okay, so back to the game. So I played king h1 to get away from the check. They did play knight to f6. And I invite you to pause and look for a strong move for white. I actually found this in the game, and then I misplayed the next move, but go ahead and pause if you would like. Okay, so if you had a chance to look at that, when you look at the position, our queen is actually pretty good. We are doing some things here. Bishops are very good. This rook on f1 is pretty nice. The only piece that's not really doing anything is this rook in the corner. And so if we had a way to activate that rook with a tempo on our opponent's queen, that would be an amazing idea. That's what I did here. Rook a to d1 attacks the queen, and now black is in trouble. So they move their queen to e5. Now I have both rooks doing a great job. The queen is doing a great job. The bishops are doing a great job. It's just a question of finding the finishing blow. And I kind of found it, but I kind of didn't find it. And I'll go ahead and pause, and then I'll explain what I mean by that. All right, if you had a chance to think about that. So the weakness in black's position that we should probably try to attack is right here, right? They can't castle and get away from it. It's an isolated pawn. It's undefended. And this would be a great opportunity for this bishop to join the party, right? So the move that I should have played, and the best and winning move, is bishop to a4. And black has a very hard time dealing with this. For example, if they play something like rook c8, we can now play queen c4, and we just keep attacking. And they have all kinds of problems. If they try to go back with queen c7, there's queen b4, where we transition to the other diagonal. Same idea of keeping them from castling, but now we have an even more powerful threat that the queen has to guard, and we're threatening bishop takes c6. And I don't think black can get away from this. So it's hard for them to play a move, but like any random move, let's just say h5, we're going to take here, and when the queen captures, we have checkmate. Okay, so that was pretty much it. Like once you play bishop a4, the game is basically over. There are a couple of variations, but black can't survive. Now, I noticed this pawn, but instead of bishop a4, I thought queen a6 was a better way. Because in my mind, I'm like, oh, I'll attack it with the queen. I'm also threatening queen b7. And you never know, maybe this bishop comes in handy on this diagonal at some point. And I didn't feel like my queen was doing that much, so I thought this was a smart decision. The problem is it gives black a way out. If you would like to pause, how can they get out of this position? Well, the move is queen b5. And whenever you're attacking someone's king, the last thing that you want is for them to force a queen trade. And that's what's happening here. I have to trade queens. Where's my queen going to go? I can't go anywhere except where this queen can take me, right? Queen a4 is the best move, but then they could take. Actually, taking is still pretty good for me because of this, but it's not as powerful. Queens are off the board. There's not going to be checkmate. Yes, I'm probably going to still win the game, but it's not as good. So queen a6 was a mistake. I should have played bishop a4. However, the point of this video is just to take a look at these bishops, and you can just see how the knights just can't do anything. Even though they're good position knights, they just can't do anything to stop the weaknesses. This illustrates the power of the bishop. So that's what I wanted to show you. In the actual game, I played queen a6. My opponent did not find queen b5. They played c5 and actually resigned because I have a lot of good moves here. Queen c6 is probably just the best, forking these pieces. If you try to come up, what's the winning move? I guess queen b7. There's all kinds of crazy tactics here, but the rooks, you can see, are preventing black from blocking, and when they go back, we simply take the rook as an example. So I hope you learned something about the knights and the bishops. This is, it comes up a lot. Should I trade my bishop for my opponent's knight? Should I trade my knight for this bishop? And as long as you can get an open board, generally speaking, the bishops are going to be better. Okay, so just something to think about. Now I recommend you go watch this video. It's going to be like above my head, where I showed a long time ago about the difference between 3 pieces and a queen in chess. Go check it out.